Hello Pickle. If you're seeing this version of the intro, you might remember me from such bold statements as, oh, I just had the flu and I've literally just got over it. Let's record a reading. I did record one reading. You might have noticed I was a little bit manic in that reading because it was right before the fever kicked in. So yes, I did not get better, in fact. I do apologise for a few days absence. If you're seeing this version, it's just my apology to say I won't be doing that again. Sorry for the hair being just out of the shower and not even styled really or anything. I don't know what's going on there. Sorry for the fact that I'm not wearing nails, that my makeup's probably skew with, but we're going to do it. In weird lighting, in the middle of the night, we're going to get some readings out, okay? So just bear with me. And if you're not subscribed, please do. Let's have an intro with some intel, shall we? Hello, hero. It's Lucy Lannon. It's good to see you. You've seen the title, so at this stage you know more about today's reading than I do, since I speak to you from the recent alternate past. This is a general, timeless one, ideally designed for quite a large audience, so we won't get as specific as we would in a private booking, link down below. If most of what I'm saying feels like an answer to a question you've been living, take those tidbits with you and let a fellow traveller excavate the rest. If it's not your reading, there are playlists on my channel hub to randomise finding something else. Whilst it's true that a broken clock is right twice a day, I'm not sure that same clock is right 10 times within the hour. So trust yourself, above all, to know what's useful for you and what makes you feel more empowered for hearing it, no matter what your beliefs. While we're on beliefs, on this channel gendered terms are just a specificity of language to describe energetic tendencies and signatures, solar or lunar inclination in accordance with a hermetic law of polarity, and not any kind of socialisation to buy into wholesale or conflate with the identity or orientation of anyone described. Romantic and spiritual labels used are plucked from lengthy precedent predating any unfortunate trending controversies or engineered cyclical backlash. My dude, around these parts, we don't relinquish the complexity of our full histories. We trust ourselves cognitively to adapt what we consume and see what's healthy and long-term accurate. I'm legally obliged to say this is entertainment in quote marks and that I'm an occultist not qualified in unrelated disciplines to advise on physical and mental health, finances, legalities. You get the picture, you're in charge of you. All my readings are protected and warded by frankly magnificent beneficial forces, though I don't share my custom prep rituals on camera any more than I give out my address. I hope the reasoning behind that is obvious, but you can trust there are zero parasitic or adversarial influences permitted within 100 unseen paces of any signal we patch from the noise here today. So sit back, relax into the shape of your most luminous possible future self, cozy up to imaginal allies, and take in whatever it is you need to hear. If you do like it, this small channel with a big mission very much appreciates subscriptions, thoughtful comments, or donations in order to spread the word and keep the lights on. Now, let's tune that dial. Alright gang, your keyword was vocation. Your tarot is the Buffy tarot deck. And your oracles are the Fallen Angels oracles, no affiliation, you don't have to believe in it, it's fine. And the Maxfield Parish playing card deck, which had a sneaky cameo in the last reading. Vocation. Firstly, something I should say is that my own grandmother was, I don't want to say bothering, but she was involved in the shuffling process of this. So there's something here about like a grandmother energy as it relates to vocation, or like a maternal energy, or something grandma-ish, or hardcore, or I don't know, you do you. Maybe some of you have like a crone matron. It could be something like that. But yeah, so I'm just going to stop shuffling and actually focus on what we have. So there is a King of Pentacles, a Knight of Stakes, and a Seven of Pentacles here. And I've moved them a different way. That's interesting because it's almost like something has been shuffled out of order, but it's still understandable, it's still easy to put back, but it's almost like something was done in what seemed like the wrong sequence at the time. And we've got someone who's a teacher but with a hidden identity, someone who's a student, and someone who's a demon from another world, not necessarily a negative in the Buffyverse. So I feel like you've taken on different roles at different times, and maybe the first role that you took on was sort of dual by its very nature, and then you decided that if you can do two things at once with that, then you'll go in another direction, and then after a while you decided, no, screw it, I'm going in another direction. And it's kind of like, if that hasn't been your path so far, I suspect that that will be your path in some way, where like if you feel that you're simultaneously juggling two things in order to pursue a vocation or in order to make a vocation work, then it's going to be like you finish those two things simultaneously, that you then go in a different direction, and then the sort of final act is you go in another one entirely. But that's not to say that you decide to do different things at different stages. And again, come to me if you want for a career reading or a gifts and purpose reading. If it's still August when this goes up, it's 20% off everything. But if not, it's, you know, it's worth the money anyway. I would be biased, but it is. It's not necessarily that if your vocational pull, your kind of inner judgment card, has three distinct acts to it, that means that you're going to be doing three things, or that you'll change your mind. It's just that sort of in the phases of getting to where it is that you're meant to be going. Thank you for the protection. Why do we need it? Hold up. Do apologise, it's quite late here and all the demons are coming out, right? Yeah, it's almost as if like, it's not that these are three distinct things that are separate from each other. It's more that like there are three phases of something that you're moving through. And the first one is dualistic, or it involves like, for example, working and studying, or running two businesses, or being one thing on paper and another thing after dark. It's very much like teacher by day, slayer by night kind of a vibe, right? And then there's like a second phase where you might feel a little bit more fledgling, because we've got Andrew here. You might feel almost like you're back in student territory. Doesn't have to be literal, but it's like you're learning again how to do a different thing, and he's literally moving in a different direction on this card. And then there's sort of the mastery level, which is the demon from the other world, and which is also the Seven of Pentacles. So it's about review, and it's about taking all of the hats that you've worn, all of the people that you've been, all of the different projects that you've kind of juggled either simultaneously or one after the other, and synthesizing them into something that is more, I want to say, cosmically resonant to you, whether or not you believe that the cosmos has anything conscious moving through it. Because I know I do have some thought experiment type people on this channel, and that's fine too. I also feel for some of you may have had a religious background, because all these crosses on the King of Pentacles, and that sort of sheds as you take on these two roles together, or at least it takes on a different meaning, a different physical manifestation in the world. If you were a churchy person, you might become less of a churchy person, but you're still very much going to church in a sort of inner way. Or you just celebrate differently, you ritualize differently. It's a difficult thing to describe, but that's what's going on with this. And there is a grounding of it into ritual or into materiality with the two pentacles at the bottom. There's a juggling of things, but it is also like figuring out what you need to make material, which is literally the money maker, right? And figuring out what it is that can stay sort of esoteric, or sort of like as a character thing, or a branding thing, or a thing that is just something extra to you. A good example is that I do this, and I would like to do this full time, and I have done before, but at the moment, because of the city I live in, I also have a day job, and in that day job, and in the, I want to say, hobbies associated with that day job, nobody knows that I do this. And they would all be, well, some know actually, but I think they would all be quite shocked to sort of see me do it, because it's almost like in those circles I'm very much that thing, and I'm understood one way, and then I go home and the cards come out and we're here, right? Or the, you know, the ceremonial magic comes out or whatever. So there is something about that, and it doesn't have to be a hidden identity, but it, like I say, it's a kind of simultaneity. And that might be a recent past thing as well, because it's King of Pentacles in the position of kind of like, we're starting off here, we're doing these two things at once, we're establishing ourselves in our kingdom in a very grounded fashion. But it's like, once that establishing is done, where are we going? So then moving on to the Knight of Stakes, which is the equivalent of the Knight of Wands, it's quite a fast movement in a different direction. And it's interesting because this Sunnydale Razorbacks poster in the background, I don't know whether you can see that, it's like a, I don't know whether it's like a scarf for the team or it's a poster or what, but anyway, it's sort of moving it's futuristically going this way and he's moving that way. So again, it's like there's a sudden swerve here. There might be a sense of, there's still a pentacle in the picture, right? Which is interesting because neither of these are pentacles cards. But there might be a sense of going back on yourself or turning back and kind of viewing things in a different fashion in order to be new at it again. So it doesn't have to be a literal student thing, but it's like a beginner's mind, a growth mindset kind of a turn. And then, as I say, finally we're ending with this Seven of Pentacles, which is the reflection and also the sort of alchemy of the whole process, really, into something fused, into something coherent, into something perhaps that nobody else is offering, even if the vocation is something that other people are doing. Because this is, as well as a demon, it's a very unique figure, and he's embodying some of the other suits as well, because he's got the wand and he is fiery, but then he's dressed like almost like 5 of Cups, and you know, there's lots of kind of things coming in where it's like, it's almost like a lesser magician card in that all the elements are assembled to act as this kind of conduit for something else. Now, if you are spiritually inclined in terms of the way that you work or what your vocation is, then it might be that you are a literal conduit, you are a transmission like I am, or there is an element of like priesthood to it or something like that. But if that's not the case, this is a sense of synthesizing what it is that you've gained and or been so far into a new definition of what that vocation actually is. That's just tarot for now, so let's move on to the fallen angels. And I did want to say the demons for a second, and that's not necessarily what they are, so some of you are demon workers and that's fine here too. We've got Gamori, which is love, 51. Beautiful cards. We've got Sabnarch, 34, discretion. If you want a review of these cards, there's one in my whole channel playlist link below. And Aries, 49, inspiration. God, I love working with these. For some of you, there's a literal love relationship that you've had to be a bit down low about, that is a massive inspiration on your path. And again, going, not to make myself the example in every reading, but going back to me saying about like having a day job and being a certain thing to those people and being obsessively that to those people, to the point where they'd be surprised that I was kind of heavily spiritual, or that indeed I had the time. There is somebody crucial in my life from that world who is an inspiration, who I have to keep things discreet with for various reasons, but who is also an inspiration to the other side of my life, because in doing that secret keeping of like, yeah, maybe we're gonna move in silence a little bit in terms of how other people think that we relate to each other versus how we actually do, there is like an assumption on the part of other people that we relate on the level of the work that I do and the things related to it. But actually, what is unique about that relationship is that it does give me inspiration for the other stuff, even though this person isn't versed in that other stuff, even though they're not a card reader, they're not a ritual magic practitioner, they're not somebody who does weddings and baby blessings and cleanses houses and all the rest of the stuff that I do, right? It's very much like, because of the hidden nature of it, it's almost like we could be more transparent with each other about core values. And I can't speak for that person, but to me that's been a great inspiration in all the facets of my life, and not just the facet that they were logically the most relevant to, if that makes sense. Getting like a pain in my neck and my shoulder is part of the way I'm sitting, but also there's like, it is a burden keeping this quiet for some of you. And with Gamori coming in and it being a love relationship, I do think for some of you, this inspiration on different facets that maybe has to be a secret thing for now is something that involves love, or that is, at least if it's not a love relationship, it's opening up the idea of that for you in some way. So if this person maybe isn't a gender you're attracted to, or they're not of an appropriate age, or they're not of that dynamic to you, maybe they're a relative or something, it's more like, by inspiring you and by sharing these secrets with you, these discretions, these kind of private wisdoms, they are enabling you to pursue the sorts of love relationship that you want through the pursuit of your vocation. And by that what I mean is, when you're doing what it is that you're meant to do, even if that's more than one thing, and even if it's in more than one place, or you have to kind of be several people to do it, love comes to you, right? You kind of have to search for it if you're not doing what you're doing. And sometimes you can be doing the right thing and you can get into a twin flame type dynamic, and it's like love's come to you, but then it takes years to go away and years to process, and it's all just a terrible time. Not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody who's maybe had relationships but not found love, right? Or not found comprehensive understanding from another person in a real way before. It's like confirmation. I don't know whether you heard that honk. Yeah, I heard you, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, it's like in being inspired to be the most you that you are, or that you can be, and to follow this vocational path even when it's challenging, or even when it requires you to be different people and wear different hats. You can be more easily understood by another person, because it's almost like the things that are magnetized towards that kind of energy come to you more easily. You're not having to search. And I think maybe if you've got a job rather than a vocation, or a career rather than a calling, there is an element of romantic relationships, because love and money are always kind of interconnected, where you kind of have to be like on the pursuit of it. And particularly if you identify as a feminine, that's not necessarily the natural position for us. It's not really like a healthy expenditure of energy generally. We tend to be the more attractant, the more seductive, the more compelling force, rather than the person running circles around somebody else in order to be seen. And I think if you've had a job rather than a calling or a vocation, you might have had this experience romantically of kind of always chasing up somebody else's attraction to you, even if they are really attracted, right? Even if those relationships are very successful, even if they've been years and years long and you've lived together and been quite happy, there is this sense of like, until you're fully you in your vocational aspect, am I really saying this? Right, okay. I had like a recent revelation. I was watching Nowhere, the Gregor Aki movie, right? I'm a big fan. Land where you will on that, I don't really care, right? But to me it's visually incredible, and it stars James Duval, who is fairly notorious in film circles for just being in weird shit and kind of turning up in the middle of it. And it's like, oh, yep, there he is. Like, you're watching something really intensely strange, or a bit rebellious, or from a certain period, and certain influences upon it visually and stuff. And it's like you almost expect James Duval to just rock up at some point, and then when he does, it feels inevitable and it's great. And there is like a little subculture of like a sort of James Duval check for films, like, is he in it? Oh yeah, of course he is, right? And it's like, I'm sure there's a letterbox list for this or something, but it's sort of an indicator of strangeness, but it's a certain kind of very like visually ostentatious 90s strangeness that I really enjoy, and that you can probably sort of judge on the channel as being my thing, right? And I recently had the revelation about myself that I'd had to assimilate a little bit in terms of the way that I present myself, and in terms of the way that I speak, and well, all sorts of things really that aren't, there's no use going into them, but in order to get certain forms of material security where I am and when I am, I had to tweak things that I wouldn't necessarily have chosen to tweak about myself. Not that I was being inauthentic, but that like I knew that certain aspects of myself would be disapproved of by people who really pull the strings on some important stuff that I wanted access to. So I did a bit of trickster magic, I did a bit of glamour, a bit of subterfuge, where I played up some aspects and toned down others, and did a bit of alteration so that I could get through certain doors, which I'm happy to say worked really well, and now I can kind of go back a bit on it, and you might see that on the channel. But the point that I'm getting to is that while I was thinking about all of this, I had the sudden revelation that now I'm a little bit freer to do what it is that I want to do, or be how it is that I'd like to be. I should present myself, and I'm not even doing this today, so I'm so sorry. I should present myself such that if James Duval rocked up in my immediate environment, he would look at me and he'd know he was in the right movie. It's like, yeah, I am meant to be here because you're definitely meant to be here. Like, I recognise this. And there's something about that, like, James Duval doesn't know me in person. He's never going to recognise me. We're not living in a movie. I'm not, like, main character syndrome or anything like that. But it's kind of analogous to the way that things work romantically when you are in your purpose, right? Because it's almost like you're being so obliviously to the outside world because you're often in a flow state, or you're in the zone, or you're really sort of transmitting what it is that you need to transmit without really paying that much attention to love, that if the love of your life was to be walking past, they would see you and be like, oh, that's the person I need to talk to. And that is something that can't really be done when you're compromising in a field where it's not quite your vocation, but it almost is. Does that make sense? I hope that that's not a really long, superfluous sort of examination of what I mean there, but that is what's coming through from this. Is like, for some of you, there is already a connection that is full of secrets in a good way. Maybe a long distance thing, because I'm seeing 3/4 miss you. But, you know, there could be like an alliance already being made that is of great inspiration in a vocational sense, and that's why that's coming through. But for others of you, if you were seeking love, and this one's facing away from the other cards, so you know it's kind of a separate thing to this vocational stuff. But if you were sort of, almost like if you'd given up on love and you were focusing on career because you were like, whatever, if I'm meant to find it, I'll find it, or I'm just frustrated with it, or whatever that is. It's like, yeah, put more into this vocational stuff, because that's how your James Duval is going to recognise you. I'd be like, right, I'm in the right movie. This is the person I wanted to speak to. This is, you know, or in just like a literal sense, it's like, are you expressing yourself? Are you branding yourself? Are you being a certain way that is authentic enough to you, that if, like, your favourite person in the world, or your best friend that you don't know yet, or the person who's next to love you, if they entered the room, would they want to sit next to you? You know what I mean? And it's like carrying yourself with that kind of energy. And again, if you want to put your focus back on love because you feel a bit iffy about your career, the flow works in two directions, because love and money are so connected. They're both so sort of Venusian and entangled with each other, that it's true both ways. So if you are in your integrity in terms of what it is that you want to do with your life, and you're making headway towards that, even if you can't see much kind of through the fog of wherever you're walking at the moment, but you're walking in the right direction, then that's going to magnetize to you the people who are supposed to be around you, whether that's love, whether that's you kind of finding your tribe, whatever. And simultaneously, if you are walking through that fog and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing career-wise, but I do know that I want to find like true love, or I want to find understanding from someone, or acceptance, or even if you're in a relationship and you want to add people to your life who are reflective of that level of union in a different way, then looking at that in terms of like, okay, would those people recognize me right now in all facets, not just in appearance, is going to be the quickest way to you actually discovering what it is that you're meant to be doing career-wise. Yeah? That actually wanted to come out. Don't know why I shuffled you back in, love. Why am I going all Yorkshire? Some of you might be, I mean, some of you are in the UK, but some of you might specifically be from Yorkshire, because it's coming through twang that I get when I'm drunk. Hey up, Siddy, if that is. You're right. But there's something about that also. For some of you, there's a film that you wanted to watch that's set in Yorkshire, or there's like a holiday to Yorkshire, if that's even a thing, maybe if you're overseas, or something like that. Confirmation happened as well, that will help you in terms of your vocational stuff. No? I'm not meant to say I don't know, I'm a tarot reader, but you know what I mean. It's a general reading for a large audience. If you want to get more specific, please book with me. Queen of Wands, which looks like a Queen of Cups, which again is that simultaneity of identity, isn't it? And then we have an Ace of Pentacles, which is in the land of trees. It's a sort of, it's very Totoro looking, that one, isn't it? Then an Eight of Pentacles, this fair maiden, and a Two of Swords in reverse, which would depict, I think that's Aladdin and his lamp. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm reading it as that. Okay, let's start with the reversal and work backwards, shall we? I want to get out of that retrograding energy, particularly because the last reading I recorded was not the most pleasant. Two of Swords reversed, Aladdin and his lamp. You don't know what to wish for. That's what it is, because it's an indecision energy reversed around this story of a guy who gets unlimited power from this magical object. You know, it doesn't have to be a lamp, it can be any kind of talisman, but it's like, it's almost like if something came to you now and said, what is your greatest wish? You'd just make a small kind of loading noise. Or at least like in one facet, you know, whether that's love or whether it is vocation or whatever, but it's like, I think you're being called to decide what your three wishes would actually be. You can't wish for more wishes, and you can't wish straight off to liberate the genie, because that's cheating. You have to know what it is for you that you would actually want. And maybe that's what you're struggling with. Like, what is my vocation? What do I actually want to be my end goal? Perhaps you have gone through kind of several different roles and you want to reach this kind of reflective synthesis over here. And you are inspired maybe by people around you, but there's a level of secrecy about that inspiration, because on the surface of it, you just don't know where you're going. And that's fine too. And I was like that for a very long time. And occasionally I go back to it for comfort. But it's sort of, there's a thing of when you start doing it, you can't misrecognize it. You can't be like fully in your purpose and then go, I don't know, is that it? Or at least not in my experience, and not in the experience of people who are in my life who are very happy with what they're doing in very, very different fields. But it's like, once you get there, once you've made the wish that is your heart's desire, you kind of know you've made it, and you kind of can realize that that wish is at the core of everything else that you would want, right? If you don't need to wish for more wishes because all the wishes relate back to that one core thing, then you've hit upon it. That's the one. That's what you wish for. But I think maybe there's a struggling with you of that process, whether it's because, and again, I do a self-concept reading, but whether it's because you've had the kind of self-concept that feels like you're not entitled to ask for things, or like you need to earn what it is that you would truly desire, or maybe it's just that it's a bit more sort of scattershot than that, and you're just like, well, I'd like this, but I'd also like this and this and this and this, and I don't really know what they have in common. And you've been asked, I mean, I started at the end and I worked backwards, right? You've been asked to work backwards from that idea of, making wishes. And when I look at Aladdin, I think of genies, and then I think of jinn, and then because I was, well, I won't tell you when I was born, but because I was born when I think of the Wishmaster trilogy, and of somebody offering to grant wishes where those wishes always have a catch. And it's kind of like, done, be careful what you wish for. And the person wishing always gets what they asked for, but it's always like, you don't want that, right? In the most gory and elaborate and horrifying ways, which is really fun, by the way, if you are a horror fan. But there's a sense coming in as well that it might be that Wishmaster energy where you're like scared that if you ask for what it is that you want, maybe the universe will give it to you, but there'll be like some terrible cosmic catch to it that you didn't anticipate. I think that's like a fear with you, that like if you were to articulate it out loud and admit it to yourself, like, yes, at the core of all the things I would like actually is this. There's almost like a fear of a response where it goes, oh, well, you can have that, but you should know that it looks like this, or you should know that, you know, it's fatal for these people, or it does this thing to the universe, or, you know, any of those sort of silly fairy tale narrative structures that don't actually apply when we're wishing for real things. Every wish is intervention, and every intervention has a butterfly effect, but it's not always a terrible thing. One of you may have had a private reading from me recently because we were talking about this, sort of. That like, there's nothing really that you can do, magically or in a mundane sense, that doesn't have like a ripple of consequence from it. And if you were to think about that for too long, you'd kind of be in a state of paralysis, including like wishing for things and what the consequences of wishing could be. Or what the consequences of like, what is my dream vocation and where could I go with it and what would success look like? And then you're kind of like almost ruminating over like, yeah, and that success could have this consequence and affect this thing, and this butterfly would flap its wings over here and this hurricane would happen over here and it'd be my fault. You know, there's that kind of energy. But again, that does tend to come from somebody who wasn't allowed to ask for things or wish for things, or had some kind of idea about themselves where it was like, if you ask for things, it will go wrong. And again, that grandmother energy is coming through that was there before. So I don't know whether this relates back to a grandmother, or whether perhaps your grandmother would have told you to snap out of it if you're thinking like that. I mean, mine would. Imagine she did used to say snap out of it a lot, with lots of different things to lots of different people. She just made that way, built that way. Yeah, make a wish. And don't be afraid to make a wish. And it, you know, with this secrecy card, with this discretion, this Sabnot card here, Miss You could actually refer to your younger self, who perhaps could ask for things, or could at least daydream for things. Could at least kind of go, yeah, wouldn't it be fun if my vocation was this? And without planning 20 zillion steps to get there and thinking about who that will hurt. But just kind of dwelling in it and trying it on. And seeing whether it feels like a more authentic version of the present moment or a less authentic version. And if it's less, don't have to do it. So yeah, it's that process of, again, mental, because it's swords, but it's kind of, it's not even deliberation, it's just like, and this thing, and maybe this thing, and what about this thing? And I don't have to choose now. I'm not making the wish out loud. I'm deciding what my wish will be. And again, it doesn't have to tell your whole future to ask for something. You don't have to say what the 10 steps of your vocation are going to look like in actuality, and where you'll be in terms of which country you're in, and who your friends are, and where you go for lunch that day for each stage. You don't need to know that yet. You're just kind of looking for like, well, what does success look like, roughly? And then you get slightly more accurate, and you're like, okay, if I work backwards from that, what am I doing now? 8 of Pentacles talks to that step-by-step process, and again, it's really resonating for someone who had a personal reading recently, so hi if you're here. But it's taking that Two of Swords deciding, really, and putting it into a stage by stage thing. But you can't do that. You can't skip the wishing and go straight to the deciding. And I think for some of you, that's what you've been trying to do. You've been like, right, I want to be an astronaut, so I need to spend this many years here and this many years here, and then I'll move to here. And it's like, you haven't yet passed your A levels, my dude. Focus on the thing in front of you. Have the dream in mind. Get exact on it if you want to and if it feels useful. But you don't have to be like, and in 10 years I will live in Arkansas. It doesn't matter yet what the ins and outs of that next stage are going to be, because you're not on that part of the path at the moment. But what you do need to concentrate on is a rough overview of, like, in order to get to a point where I do know that information, I'll need to have financial stability, or I'll need to have these qualifications, or I'll need to have this kind of magical or ritual skill, or I'll need to have a supporter in my life even. Sometimes your first step can be as simple as like, gee, I need to get some friends who aren't against this, right? That was a whole world of difference in my own circumstances, believe me. So yeah, it's kind of going, what is my wish? And going as broad as you want with that, and as general as you need to, in order for it to feel like, yes, this is the one, I'm on the right track. And then going, okay, what are the rough steps to that? I'd have to decide what the tiniest little stage is before final boss, but I do have to be like, well, in the first 5 years of that process, what am I probably doing? And then you go from that 5 and you go into 1 year, and then you go, and in that 1 year, roughly how much do I need to get done a quarter? And then you're planning your season, right? I mean, it's a lot more in depth than that, depending on what your vocation is. And it can sometimes be a lot more prescriptive from the outside world in terms of that. But again, general reading, large audience, you do you. I think the more important thing at the moment is that you actually admit to yourself that you haven't out loud asked for what you want yet, or you haven't decided what would make you recognizable to the kinds of people that you want to attract. You've maybe put it out there to the universe that you want to attract them, but that's different from being like, what do they need to see in me to know that I'm what they need? Does that make sense? And we're not about like altering ourselves to cater for people or anything like that on this channel. That's not what I'm saying. It's more like, again, if I was in a room, would the sorts of people that I want to be doing this vocation with or for recognize me enough that they sit down with me? Or if I was in a job interview, do I have the kind of experiences and even stories where somebody who's doing the kind of vocation that I want to do would pick me out of a lineup and go, yeah, it was that person because they said about this thing that they did, and that really resonated, or that really seemed like the angle or the energy we were looking for. Because often it's not about qualifications, it's about, well, it is about qualifications, but it's about past a certain point, it's also about who you are and what your life experience has been, because everybody kind of has those qualifications, right? Tarot reading is a good example, actually, because it actually doesn't take a lot to learn tarot. Either you have a certain amount of psychic skill and it's just a case of opening that up with practice, or you can be at the other end and you can be doing it in an analytical learning cards kind of a way, and then it's a case of just like reading enough and saturating enough in the information that over, like, I would suggest 5 to 10 years before you're reading for other people, you've kind of developed a system of understanding and you're really proficient in it. What differentiates a good reader then isn't having done either of those processes, it's whether their vibe is the one that you want from your reader for your life, whether their ethics are in line with the sorts of things that you want to know about or do, whether where they are and where they've come from is something that can offer you any kind of either familiarity or wisdom. And then it gets quite complicated, but it's like, yes, you don't want a tarot reader who can't read tarot, But past a certain threshold where kind of everybody can, in that community, it becomes less about whether they can read the cards and more about what person they are, and whether you recognise them as being either somebody like you or somebody useful to you. And I think that's really true of a lot of different industries, right? You can have your system, your Eight of Pentacles way of getting to a certain process or training or getting past a certain threshold of experience. But then beyond that, what's going to get you in the right places and meeting the right kinds of people to further your development and to deepen your knowledge and to sort of tailor it to you in a way, is going to be how you lived it. I think that's really important for you, whoever you are. And I don't know what industry this is. I don't know whether it's related to anything like tarot, but it certainly seems vocational. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but in the sort of sense of a calling, or something that's like, it's now okay to say out loud that you want this, or that you wanted to do this, or that if someone were to ask you what your greatest wish is, either this would be it, or the thing that you wish for would be kind of underlying in this, right? This is vocational in the true sense. It's kind of time now to step up to that and be like, right, well, how does that dream recognise me? And not the other way around. Because if I see it, I have to be the thing that it sees. Ace of Pentacles just reiterates that point, really. Although I find it interesting that it's in that like, Totoro world, or this kind of, it almost reminds me of the Ewoks as well in Star Wars. It's a very sort of symbiotic thing. And for some of you, I think this vocation is maybe esoteric, or maybe dealing with stuff that you can't see and that you kind of have to have a certain amount of trust in or build relationships with, whether that's like spirit familiars, or in some cases it's like working with animals, right, in a literal sense, or there's just something like that about like being in a balanced ecosystem with something that's either unseen or that doesn't communicate in the same ways that people in an office do. And the way to get to that is to go backwards through this process that we've discussed and to be recognisable to it. Many years ago I did an animal communication course in a sort of spiritual sense, and I didn't take it any further because I actually, well, let's not go into why I didn't take it further actually, because I don't want to badmouth anybody, but let's say that the first thing that you do when you're kind of trying to have an unseen dialogue or like a telepathic relationship with an animal, and we're talking some pets but we're also talking wild animals. I mean, we did it like with domesticated animals, and then we did it with the big boys at the zoo, and it was quite terrifying in some ways. But in either of those kinds of dynamics, you're doing pretty much what you do with spirit work or spirit familiars, where you show it that you're safe on a kind of energetic level. You open up in a certain way, you visualize certain things about or through yourself that are like a door unlocking, and you going, hey, I'm here to see you. And it's incredible to watch the response of an animal when you do that kind of thing energetically, where they will turn around and kind of, bro, like, do you just fucking talk to me, bro? Particularly with like animals that were, I'm going to say not indigenous to this country. It was remarkable to see things that I'd never dreamt of being able to have any kind of straightforward communication with, and have them literally turn around and walk over to me once I switch that process on, right, from a magical perspective. And there's something here about like there is an element of that to your vocation, whether or not you're working with the non-human or the extra human or whatever it is. There's this kind of like opening yourself up to a relationship with something that is then going to be magnetized back to you. So if your chosen career or vocational purpose is something far more practical than anything I've been on about, then what we're referencing here is that ability to be like giving off the signals of someone who belongs in that environment in an authentic and not a performed way. kind of opening the gates within self and being like, I am a fill in the blank, to the point where everything involved in that industry or in that calling or in that place or in that group of people or whatever it is goes, oh yeah, we recognise you. Hi, you know, do you want to work together? And it's a beautiful thing, it's a remarkable thing. It actually chokes me up quite a bit to think about, but it's something you can do. Like, yes, magically you can do it with the extra human, and yes, in a mundane sense you can do it with animals, but it's like also something that's just goes back to that hermetic law of attraction in a really true way. And I'm not talking law of attraction in terms of like Abraham Hicks and all the rest of it. I'm talking like the sacred law of like attracts like, at the root of it, before all the New Thought movement, before 70s individualism, all of it, right? Don't Adam Curtis me. But there is something key to like knowing how to open the gates within the self to just be a certain thing and be like, I'm taking on that. I am that now. I am that mantle. And having it respond back to you and say, oh yeah, and what a relief, you know? Or in this case of the love stuff, we've been looking for you everywhere. What was remarkable to me in that relationship was that I'd been on a really difficult twin flame journey for a lot of years. A lot more years than I should have been as a tarot reader, put it that way. And I was despairing that I might not find somebody who related to me on the levels that I work in terms of this stuff, who I was also attracted to in terms of just what I find stimulating in a partner. And what I found instead was somebody who had no relationship to this world, but it was that thing of like, oh, I've been looking for you everywhere. And as soon as I let go of the idea that it has to be somebody who's interested in this, or it has to be somebody who's like my twin flame in some way, or has these things that my twin flame definitely didn't have that protect me against a mean world, or whatever it is, right? As soon as I just let go of like, oh, I don't even care anymore, this perfect individual showed up. I know perfect's a risky word, but they are perfect. And just kind of went, oh, I can't believe you're all these things. And I went, oh, I can't believe you're all these things. That's really crazy. Let's be best friends, you know. And I think that there's a similar process here going on with you, whether that be with love or with money. Working backwards again, finally, we've got Queen of Wands. But like I say, it looks like a Queen of Cups, right? Queen of Wands is about saturating yourself in pleasure. It's about being jubilantly and freely creative within the constraints of where you can do that and where, you know, time and energy allow. But it's like the utmost saturation of you being you within your personal life and enjoying the abundance of the universe, enjoying the spirit moving through all things, the force, if you're like me and you're mad on Star Wars, right? Or kind of sitting in the emotion of existence, which is why she's in this oceanic thing. And just dwelling in what it feels like to be in the moment. So there is something that relates from here to here about living in the wish fulfilled in that kind of law of assumption type way, right? Neville Goddard type way. But more than that, it's about like before that point of fulfillment, can you still embody who you're going to be when the vocation is more of a, you know, more dominant in your life, time-wise, and be the whatever. You know, if you want to be an architect, be the architect now, but also dwell fully in like what it is that you're experiencing now each and every day that you're really enjoying as that architect. Not as you going to be an architect, but as you now as the architect, being like, wow, this is incredible. From the perspective of me, who's had a long career in architecture, in the body of somebody here and now who hasn't, I really enjoy this thing, or this building, or this perspective on this thing, or the combination of colours, or, you know, whatever it is, right? Architect was possibly a bad example, but it's an appreciation for the moment, but I think when I say that, there's often a risk of like implying that you're just happy with your lot wherever you are now and that it can't be aspirational. I think instead what I'm asking you to do is, from the embodied state of being who it is that you're going to be at the end of all this, right, the final boss of you, when you've made your wish and had it granted, but just like taking a trip for the weekend in your life as it is now and looking at it through those eyes and maybe like seeing more clearly what needs to not be there in order to sort of fill in the missing process, but also seeing what it is that you like about being here now and not there, right? And not at the final end of your fruition, because I think we're so busy trying to hurry to the end state that we sometimes miss what it is that each stage of the journey is gifting to us that enables that end state in the first place. And again, it's the thing of like, everybody can get the qualifications, but what experience did you have? What person did you become while you were learning those things? And did you Queen of Wands it? Did you enjoy as much of your day as you possibly could, from the moment you get out of bed and make a coffee or whatever, to the moment that you're tired from a full day of work and learning and whatever else delightful, and you hit the pillow and you're like, oh, that was a great day, you know? It might feel really far from where you are now to think like that, but I think if you imagine yourself within this vocational identity, it's going to actually make it a lot easier to appreciate now, because it's almost like you don't have to fully settle into it, because you know you've got the safety net of who you're going to become. But from that vantage point, you can almost regard where you are now like some kind of alien and be like, ah, interesting, you know? Wouldn't have put that there. And maybe that's why Aladdin had to come in as well, because it's like, you know, phenomenal cosmic power, itty bitty living space. It's very kind of, the two things are simultaneous, and it's a really interesting dynamic. And again, it's a polarity, and whenever you're dancing with these polarities playfully rather than seeing them as dichotomies, you're attracting in that energy of cooperation and love that we talked about in terms of opening the gates. I think that's it. That's what you meant to know. I liked this one. I hope you did. If you did, please like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. Please book with me in my shop, the link is down below. If you can't afford to book with me at this time, or you've just no interest, that's absolutely fine. There is a full channel shuffle playlist as well, so if you want to keep that bookmarked somewhere, and then each time you want a random reading from the 100 and odd different pick a pile type stuff that I've done in the past, you can just hit the shuffle button and it'll give you something new for that particular day. That helps me out also. Yeah, I think this is going to be wonderful. If you feel comfortable, in the comments, let me know what vocationally it is that you're aspiring to do and what you feel that the block has been, versus what it is that this like embodied final self thinks of the whole situation when you're in like that abundant, oh cool, that's how I get here kind of mindset. Yeah. Take care.